Natalie Brooks, 32, buries her father on a cold Tuesday in November. Kenneth Brooks had been sick for 6 months. Lung cancer. The kind that doctors initially described with careful optimism before it spread so quickly that every conversation changed from treatment plans to pain management, then from pain management to hospice. 8 weeks. That was all it took for us to go from discussing radiation appointments to choosing which room in his house could fit a hospital bed. My father was 67, a retired firefighter who had spent 30 years running toward burning buildings while everyone else ran away from them. He had carried children through smoke, pulled trapped drivers from crushed vehicles, and once crawled beneath a collapsing roof because he heard a woman screaming inside. He deserved a gentler ending. Instead, cancer reduced him piece by piece while I sat beside him pretending not to notice how loose his wedding ring had become. My mother died when I was 12, so Dad had raised my sister Rachel and me alone. He learned to braid hair badly, signed permission slips 5 minutes before school, and burned enough dinners that the smoke alarm became our unofficial announcement that food was ready. He had always protected us. Even near the end, when breathing hurt, he was still trying, especially from Caleb. Caleb Anderson had been my fiancé for 6 months, and my boyfriend for 2 years before that. Our wedding was planned for the following spring. He was handsome, ambitious, socially effortless, the kind of man who could enter a room full of strangers and leave knowing everyone's name. I thought I was lucky. Dad had never said he disliked Caleb directly. He preferred jokes that sounded harmless, unless you listen closely. Has he asked what the house is worth yet? Dad once murmured after Caleb left Thanksgiving dinner. Another time after Caleb complimented Dad's firefighter pension, Dad looked at me and said, "At least he appreciates the important parts of my personality." I accused him of being unfair. Dad only shrugged. "Dying makes a man suspicious," he said. "Or observant. Hard to tell which." I wanted to believe it was the cancer making him paranoid. Parents facing death worry about who will protect their children when they are gone. I assumed that was all it was. The funeral began at 10 in the morning. There were about 40 people, family, neighbors, and old firefighters who stood straighter when the casket passed them. Caleb wore a black suit and held my hand throughout the service. When my voice broke during the eulogy, he passed me a tissue and placed his palm against my back. For those few minutes, he was exactly who I needed him to be. At the cemetery, the wind moved sharply between the headstones. We stood in a semicircle around Dad's casket while the priest said the final prayers. Rachel stood on my left. Caleb stood on my right, his arm linked through mine. When they lowered the casket, something inside me resisted the sight. My mind kept insisting that Dad was only beneath the polished wood, that someone could still open it, stop everything, and tell me there had been a mistake. Then the priest handed me a small amount of dirt. I dropped it. The sound it made against the casket was soft but final. That was the moment my father's death became real. People began drifting toward their cars. Aunt Linda was reminding everyone about the reception at Dad's house. Rachel had stopped beside one of his former captains, who was telling her a story about Dad arriving at an emergency call in my mother's station wagon after his truck broke down. I was still staring into the grave when Caleb leaned closer. His mouth was near my ear. "So who gets his pension now?" For a second, I thought grief had distorted his words. "What?" "His pension," Caleb repeated quietly. "You said he was receiving around $3,000 a month, right?" I turned my head toward him. He continued before he noticed my expression. "We could really use that money. The wedding costs are already getting out of control. And maybe we could upgrade the honeymoon suite in Bali, the one you said was too expensive." My body went completely still. Not because I did not understand him, because I did. Aunt Linda was standing 6 feet away. She had turned toward us, her face drained of every trace of warmth. My cousin Michael stood behind her looking as though someone had struck him. Caleb kept talking. "We should contact the attorney this week. There might be survivor benefits too. Usually spouses qualify, but since your mom is gone, maybe it transfers to you as his daughter." "Caleb." My voice came out flat. He finally looked at me. "What?" "Aunt Linda heard you." He glanced toward her, then back at me. Instead of looking ashamed, he looked inconvenienced. "It was just a practical question." "At my father's grave? Somebody has to think about these things, Natalie. Your dad would want you taken care of." The dirt is still fresh. I'm not celebrating his death. I'm discussing our financial future. Aunt Linda walked toward us. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but anger seemed to make her larger. Caleb, you need to leave. He blinked. Excuse me. Get in your car and leave the cemetery. Caleb looked at me, waiting for me to defend him. That look hurt almost as much as his words. It carried certainty. He genuinely believed I would choose him over the people who had just heard him calculate the value of my father's death. Instead, I stepped away and removed my arm from his. You should go, I said. Over one comment. You asked how we could spend my father's pension, while I was standing beside his open grave. I was trying to help. Rachel had approached after hearing the raised voices. What happened? Caleb was asking about Kenneth's pension, Aunt Linda said. He thinks they can use it for their wedding and upgrade their honeymoon. Rachel stared at him. Confusion crossed her face first, then disgust. Leave. Caleb looked around. Several relatives and 2 of Dad's former colleagues were watching him now. You're all overreacting, he said. I didn't mean anything by it. Go, I repeated. His face hardened. Fine. But when everyone calms down, maybe we can discuss this like adults. He walked toward the parking lot, his dress shoes sinking into the damp grass. After he disappeared, Aunt Linda wrapped her arms around me. She did not say anything. Neither did Rachel. There was nothing anyone could say that would make his words less ugly. At Dad's house, the reception continued until nearly 2. People ate casseroles and sandwiches, drank coffee, and told stories about Dad, the child he once pulled from a collapsed building, the chili cook-off. He won 3 years in a row, the recipe he refused to share, even when Rachel tried, bribing him. Caleb called 4 times. I ignored every call. Then he texted. I'm sorry if I upset everyone. Call me when you can. Not, I'm sorry for what I said. Not I'm sorry I hurt you. Only if everyone was upset as though the problem was their reaction rather than his words. At 3 o'clock, Dad's attorney arrived. Martin Grayson had handled my father's legal affairs for 15 years. He carried a worn leather briefcase and wore the same dark suit he had worn to the funeral. We gathered in Dad's living room. Rachel, Aunt Linda, Uncle Thomas Michael, and a few relatives named in the will. Martin placed several folders on the coffee table. Before we begin, he said, I need to mention that Kenneth and Natalie met with me last week to make some final changes. Rachel turned toward me. What changes? I looked at Martin. He opened the first folder. We'll get to that. At that exact moment, the front door opened. Caleb stepped inside, still wearing his funeral suit. He looked around at the silent room and smiled uncertainly. Sorry, I'm late, he said. What did I miss? He had no idea my father had already answered that question before he died. Martin looked toward the doorway without closing the folder in his hands. We're in the middle of a private reading, he said. This is intended for family members and named beneficiaries. Caleb's uncertain smile disappeared. I'm Natalie's fiancé. That does not make you a beneficiary. I said he could stay, I told Martin. Every person in the room looked at me. Caleb seemed relieved. He crossed the living room and sat beside me on the couch, as though the scene at the cemetery had already been settled. His hand reached for mine. I allowed him to take it. Not because I had forgiven him, because I wanted to feel what happened when Martin read the next page. All right, Martin said. We'll continue. He went through the standard provisions first. Dad's house was left jointly to Rachel and me. We could sell it and divide the proceeds, or one of us could buy out the other's share. Dad's truck went to Uncle Thomas. His personal belongings were to be divided among the family, according to a list he had handwritten during his final weeks. His savings account contained a little more than $40,000. Half went to Rachel, half went to me. Caleb squeezed my hand. It was subtle enough that no one else appeared to notice. I did. Martin turned another page. Now we come to Kenneth's pension. The pressure of Caleb's fingers changed. As everyone here knows, Kenneth received approximately $3,200 per month through the Retired Firefighters Pension Fund. Under the survivor benefit option, he selected 70% of that amount may continue after his death, subject to the beneficiary designation and eligibility requirements. Caleb leaned slightly forward. Martin continued. Kenneth was deeply concerned that these benefits be used responsibly and remain within his immediate family. Last week, with Natalie present, he finalized a revised designation and created a restricted trust. Rachel looked at me again. You knew about this? I nodded. Martin placed one document on the table. The survivor benefit, approximately $2,200 per month, will be paid into a trust for Natalie for up to 10 years. If Natalie dies before the trust terminates, the remaining benefits transfer to Rachel, subject to the pension plan's terms. Caleb's thumb stopped moving over my hand. Why did Dad change it last week? Rachel asked. He asked me to, I said. What was he worried about? Before I could answer, Martin lifted a second document. There are restrictions. Caleb turned toward me. What kind of restrictions? Martin answered him. The trust may be used for housing expenses, approved educational costs, and medical care. It may not be used for luxury purchases, wedding expenses, honeymoons, speculative investments, or transfers to individuals outside Kenneth's immediate family. The room became painfully quiet. Caleb's hand tightened around mine. Martin read from the document. Furthermore, if Natalie becomes engaged or married during the term of the trust, her fiancé or spouse must execute a valid prenuptial or marital agreement, acknowledging that neither the trust principal nor its distributions constitute marital property. Caleb released my hand. Martin did not look away from the page. The spouse must also waive any present or future claim to the pension benefits in the event of separation, divorce, or Natalie's death, except where specifically authorized by the trust. Caleb sat rigidly beside me. For the first time that day, he had nothing to say. Rachel looked from Martin to me, then slowly toward Caleb. Understanding moved across her face. Dad did this because of him. It was not a question. Martin closed the folder. Kenneth added the restrictions after expressing concerns regarding Natalie's engagement. Caleb's jaw tightened. What concerns? I turned to face him. Dad thought you were with me for money. A faint, humorless laugh escaped him. Your father barely knew me. He knew enough to worry. He never gave me a chance. I defended you every time. Caleb stared at me. I remembered the conversation with Dad from the previous week. He had been lying in the hospital bed near the window, his oxygen tube resting beneath his nose. Afternoon light fell across his face, showing every hollow place the illness had carved into him. Do you believe he loves you? She had asked. Yes, I answered automatically. Dad watched me. Not accusingly, not even skeptically, patiently. The way parents watch children who are trying to convince themselves. Then he asked a different question. Does he love you, Natalie, or does he love the life he thinks you can give him? I had opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Dad's expression softened. That silence is why we're calling Martin. I had insisted the trust was unnecessary. I told him Caleb would never care about money that came from his death. Dad reached for my hand. Then, this won't hurt your relationship, he said. A locked door only bothers someone who planned to enter. Now, sitting beside Caleb, I understood why Dad had been so calm. This is manipulative, Caleb said. Aunt Linda folded her arms. Interesting word from a man who discussed a honeymoon while standing over Kenneth's grave. Caleb ignored her. Natalie, your father created a trap. No, I said. He created a boundary. He created a test that I didn't know I was taking. You knew enough to ask about the pension before we left the cemetery. I asked one practical question. You asked who would get the money. Then you said we could use it for Bali. His eyes darted toward the others. This is exactly why I didn't want to discuss it publicly. Everything I say gets twisted. Michael shook his head. Nobody twisted anything. We heard you. Caleb stood. So now, I'm on trial. No one called you here, Rachel said coldly. You walked in. I came because I'm supposed to be part of this family. Then you should have acted like it at the burial. Caleb turned back to me. You're seriously going to let your family speak to me this way? The old version of me would have stood up immediately. I would have asked everyone to calm down. I would have translated Caleb's selfishness into nervousness, his entitlement into concern, his anger into embarrassment. But my father was dead. I no longer had the energy to make ugly things look harmless. You still haven't apologized, I said. I already texted you. You said you were sorry if people were upset. They were upset. That is not the same as being sorry for what you said. Caleb dragged a hand through his hair. Fine. I'm sorry the timing was bad. Aunt Linda gave a small laugh of disbelief. The timing? I stood slowly. Do you understand what you did? Yes. I brought up finances at a difficult moment. No. You looked at my father's open grave and saw wedding money. That's not what happened. Then tell me what happened. I was thinking about our future. Our future depended on Dad dying. Of course not. But his death improved it financially. That was your thought. You're making me sound monstrous. I'm repeating what you said. His face reddened. Your dad was receiving money every month. That money had to go somewhere. Asking where it went doesn't mean I wanted him dead. No one said you wanted him dead. You're all acting like I did. I studied his face. He seemed genuinely offended, but not devastated, not ashamed. His greatest discomfort came from being judged, not from having hurt me. That realization settled inside me with terrible clarity. Did you care about him? I asked. Caleb frowned. What? My father. Did you care that he died? Of course I cared. How? What kind of question is that? Tell me one thing you will miss about him. Caleb looked around the room, as though someone might provide him with the correct answer. I waited. He was your father, he finally said. I respected that. That isn't an answer. I didn't know him well. He kept me at a distance. Maybe because he saw something I refused to see. Caleb's expression changed. What exactly do you think you see? That you love what I provide. His mouth opened, but I kept going. My stable job, my condominium, the fact that I have no debt, the vacations I help pay for, the wedding I've been covering because your savings somehow disappear every month. That is not fair. Then name one reason you love me that has nothing to do with stability, security, or what I can give you. The question hung between us. Caleb stared at me. His silence lasted only a few seconds. It felt much longer. You're putting me on the spot. I'm your fiancé. It should not be difficult. I'm not going to perform for your family. Then whisper it to me. He looked away. That hurt more than I expected. Not because he failed to produce a perfect answer. Because he could not produce any answer at all. This is grief talking, he said. You're not thinking clearly. For a moment, I almost laughed. He had found a way to make my pain evidence against me. Caleb grabbed his coat from the arm of the couch. I'm leaving. Call me after you've calmed down, and we can discuss the trust rationally. The trust? He froze. Not the funeral. Not my father. Not us. The trust. Martin lowered his eyes toward the folder. Everyone else had heard it too. Caleb realized his mistake, but it was too late. I meant everything he said quickly. We can discuss everything. I stepped aside so he could reach the door. He paused in front of me. Are you coming home tonight? I'm staying here. For how long? I don't know. His face hardened again. Don't let your family destroy what we have. Then he left. The door closed behind him. For several seconds no one spoke. Rachel was the first to break the silence. How long did Dad suspect him? A few months, I said. And you never told me. I didn't want you to judge Caleb before I understood it myself. Aunt Linda sat beside me. What did Kenneth say? I looked at Dad's empty chair near the fireplace. Last week, he asked whether Caleb loved me or loved what I could give him. What did you tell him? Rachel asked. I swallowed. I told him I didn't know anymore. The answer seemed heavier now than it had in Dad's bedroom. So he called Martin, I continued. Dad said if Caleb truly loved me, the restrictions would not matter. If he didn't, eventually the money would expose him. Aunt Linda placed her hand over mine. Your father was protecting you. I thought he was being paranoid. No, Martin said, quietly. He was running out of time. I stared at the closed front door. I had expected Caleb to be angry about being embarrassed at the cemetery. I had not expected him to be angry that money from my father's death would never belong to him. Dad had predicted that too. What terrified me most was not that Caleb had failed the test. It was how quickly he had done it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard dirt striking my father's casket. Then Caleb's voice drifted into the silence. We could use the extra money. The sentence replayed over and over, until I could no longer tell whether the ache in my chest came from grief or betrayal. Maybe both. Dad's house felt impossibly quiet after everyone finally left. Rachel had fallen asleep in the guest room after hours of sorting paperwork and old photographs. Aunt Linda insisted on washing dishes simply because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. I stayed in Dad's recliner until dawn. His reading glasses still rested on the table beside me. His favorite coffee mug sat in the sink. Everything looked exactly the way he'd left it. Everything except him. Around 7 the next morning, my phone buzzed. Caleb. He let it ring. It rang again. And again. Finally, a message appeared. Can we please talk? Another followed less than a minute later. I'm outside your condo. He didn't know I had stayed at Dad's house. About 20 minutes later, another text arrived. I left you a note under the door. Please read it before you decide anything. I didn't answer. Rachel found me staring at the phone while pouring coffee. Him. I nodded. You don't owe him today. I know. Or tomorrow. She squeezed my shoulder before carrying 2 mugs to the kitchen table. For years, Rachel had avoided criticizing Caleb around me. Now I understood why. She had been protecting me from an argument I wasn't ready to have. At noon, I finally drove back to my condominium. The hallway was empty. A folded envelope lay beneath my front door, exactly where Caleb had said it would be. My name was written neatly across the front. Inside was a single handwritten page. Nathalie, I'm sorry about yesterday. I handled the situation badly. Your family has never accepted me, and I panicked when everyone turned against me. I know the funeral wasn't the right place, but the trust and prenup aren't reasonable. Marriage means sharing everything. I can't marry someone whose father still controls our finances after he's gone. Please don't let one misunderstanding destroy 2 years together. I love you, Caleb. I read it twice. The apology occupied 4 lines. The trust occupied the rest of the page. I folded the letter carefully. Not because it deserved preserving, because it reminded me of something Dad used to say. When someone apologizes, pay attention to what they spend the most words defending. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter. Then, I called Caleb. He answered before the first ring finished. Nathalie. His relief was obvious. I was starting to think you blocked me. I read your note. So, I have a question. Anything. Why was more than half of your apology about the trust? Silence. Then a sigh. Because that's the real issue. No. It is. My father died yesterday. I know. No, Caleb. You know the fact. You don't understand what it means. I do understand. Then explain why your biggest concern isn't losing me. It is. No. My concern is losing us. Then why does every conversation come back to money? It doesn't. It started with the pension. You keep bringing that up. It happened yesterday. You act like I committed a crime. I closed my eyes. I'm trying to understand. So ang I. Then, answer honestly. I'm being honest. Why is the prenup such a problem? He didn't hesitate this time. Because it says you don't trust me. No. It absolutely does. It says Dad wanted to protect money that came from his death. It says your husband won't be your equal. I leaned against the kitchen counter. My husband would be my equal. Not financially. The trust doesn't define our marriage. It absolutely affects it. How? He took a breath. It's $2,200 every month. There it was. Again. Not grief. Not us. A number. You already calculated it, didn't you? What? The total. No. You did. A longer silence. Finally, it's over $260,000. I closed my eyes. He knew the amount. He had gone home after my father's funeral and done the math. You figured it out. I was trying to understand what this means for our future. Our future? Yes. My father hadn't even been gone 24 hours. I wasn't celebrating. You were calculating. You keep twisting everything. No. My voice remained calm. I'm finally hearing you clearly. He exhaled sharply. Fine. If we're married, that income affects both of us. It doesn't. It should. It legally won't. Which is ridiculous. My father had every right to protect it. He had every right to poison you against me. My father didn't poison me. Then why are you acting like this? Because yesterday I watched the man I planned to marry worry more about pension payments than my heartbreak. That's unfair. Is it? You know what I meant. No, I don't. He became frustrated. Natalie, think logically. I almost laughed. My father is dead. I'm aware. I buried him yesterday. I know. And today you're asking me to debate financial structures. I'm asking you to trust me. Then sign the prenup. Silence. It lasted longer than before. Finally, I can't. Why? It's the principle. What principle? That married people shouldn't keep things from each other. This isn't something I'm keeping. It is. It's survivor benefits from my father's pension. It becomes household income. It doesn't. It should. My father specifically prevented that. Exactly. There it was again. Not sadness. Not empathy. Frustration. Because he couldn't reach something he believed should eventually belong to him. Dad was right, I whispered. What? He said if you loved me, the trust wouldn't matter. This isn't about money. Then prove it. I am. No. You aren't. If this money disappeared tomorrow, I paused. Would you still want to marry me exactly the same way? Of course. Without hesitation. Obviously. Then, sign the prenup. Another silence. I can't. Those two words landed harder than anything else he'd said. Not because he refused. Because he refused after claiming money wasn't important. I think we're done. The words surprised even me. What? I need time. Natalie. I can't do this. You're ending our engagement over paperwork. I'm questioning our engagement because of everything that happened before the paperwork. I made one mistake. No. You did. The funeral exposed a pattern. What pattern? You always notice money first. That's ridiculous. Is it? Memories surfaced one after another. The luxury condo Caleb insisted we tour even though we'd agreed on a budget. His disappointment when I suggested a smaller wedding. The jokes about how lucky we'd be once my mortgage was paid off. The excitement whenever bonuses or investments came up. Individually. Each moment had seemed harmless. Together, they formed a picture I had refused to assemble. You've changed, he said quietly. No. I've stopped explaining your behavior for you. He began crying. Real tears. Or convincing ones. I honestly couldn't tell anymore. Please. I love you. I know you believe that. What does that mean? I think you love the life you imagine we'll have. I love you. Then why can't you let go of money that was never yours? He had no answer. Instead, he whispered, Don't throw away 2 years. I looked around my empty condo. Dad's reading glasses were still in my purse because I'd accidentally packed them after leaving his house. I held them in my hand. I'm not throwing away 2 years. I swallowed. I'm accepting that my father saw something I couldn't. Then, I ended the call. 3 days passed. Caleb sent flowers. I returned them. He sent long emails explaining why shared finances were healthy in marriage. None of them mentioned my father. None of them asked how I was surviving the grief. Every message somehow returned to the trust. Then, on Friday afternoon, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. Natalie. A woman's voice. This is Patricia Anderson, Caleb's mother. I hope I'm not interrupting. What can I do for you? I think you're making a terrible mistake. I leaned back in my chair. I figured that's why you were calling. Caleb is devastated. I'm sorry he's hurting. So, are you really ending your engagement because of one awkward comment? No. That's what Caleb told us. He said everyone overreacted. I closed my eyes. What exactly did he tell you happened? He said he asked a practical question about the pension, and your family humiliated him. Did he tell you what he actually said? He said. She hesitated. He asked, who would receive the benefits? Was that all? I assumed. I took a slow breath. No. He whispered. We could use the extra money. Silence. He suggested upgrading our honeymoon in Bali. More silence. While we were still standing beside my father's grave. Nothing. Then, quietly, he didn't tell us that. He also spent the next 3 days arguing about the trust, instead of apologizing for saying it. Patricia didn't interrupt. I buried my father Tuesday morning. My fiancé spent Tuesday afternoon wondering how much money his death would generate. The silence stretched so long that I wondered whether the call had disconnected. Finally, she spoke. Her voice sounded smaller. I'll talk to him. I think you should. The call ended. For the first time, all week, someone outside my family had finally heard the whole story, and they hadn't defended him. 2 days after Patricia called me, my phone vibrated while I was helping Rachel pack another box from Dad's garage. It was a text from Caleb. Fine. I'll sign the prenup. Can we please move forward? I stared at the message for nearly a minute. A week earlier, those words would have filled me with relief. Now they only made me tired. Rachel noticed my expression. Him again. I handed her the phone. She read the message, then looked back at me. He finally agreed. After arguing about it for 6 days, she nodded slowly. That's not the same thing. No, it isn't. I walked outside into Dad's backyard. The maple tree he'd planted when I was born was already beginning to lose its leaves. Every autumn he complained about raking them. Every autumn he smiled while saying it. He dialed Caleb. He answered immediately. Natalie, I got your text. So, we'll work this out. I appreciate that you've decided to sign. Relief flooded his voice. Good. I knew once we both calmed down, but I don't think we should get married. Silence. Long enough that I checked the screen to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Finally, what? I don't think we should get married. You're kidding. I'm not. But I'm agreeing to everything. Now, you are. What difference does that make? It makes all the difference. He laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. So this was never about the prenup. It wasn't. It was a test I couldn't pass. No. It was a chance to show me who you are. I already showed you. You did. And somehow that wasn't enough. It was. He frowned audibly. I don't understand. You only agreed after you realized I was willing to walk away. I needed time to think. So did I. I chose us. You chose me after realizing you might lose access to me. That's not fair. Neither was asking about my father's pension while I was still crying. He sighed heavily. I've apologized. You apologized for the timing. I apologized. No. You apologized because people judged you. I apologized because I hurt you. When? He hesitated. You never once said, Natalie, I am so sorry I spoke about your father that way. I thought it was obvious. It wasn't. I've been grieving too. Those words stopped me. You've been grieving. Yes. My future collapsed too. For a second, I simply stared at the backyard. Then, I quietly asked, your future? Our wedding? Our plans? Our life together? I closed my eyes. My father died. I know. And you're comparing that to postponing a wedding. I didn't mean it like that. But you said it anyway. He groaned. No matter what I say, it's wrong. Because you keep telling me what you've lost. You've lost me too. Yes. And that hurts. It does. But it isn't the deepest hurt I'm carrying. He became quiet. So that's it. I think so. 2 years. Yes. Thrown away. No. I looked toward Dad's garden. He'd spent years pruning the rose bushes. Every spring, he'd cut away healthy-looking branches. When I asked why, he'd smile. Because dead wood hides inside living stems. If he didn't remove it, the whole plant weakened. I'm finally cutting away something that was already dying, I said softly. You really believe your father was right? I do. You've let a dying man control your life. No. My father protected me. He manipulated you. He gave me clarity. He poisoned your family against me. My family didn't need convincing. Caleb's voice sharpened. They never liked me. Rachel was Polita. She judged me. Aunt Linda barely tolerated me. They welcomed you. They tolerated me because of you. They tried. No, Natalie. They looked down on me from the beginning. I thought about family dinners, birthdays, Christmas mornings, Rachel asking Caleb about work, Aunt Linda inviting him fishing with Uncle Thomas, Dad teaching him how to grill steaks. None of it matched the picture Caleb was painting. Then, another memory surfaced. Dad had invited Caleb to help rebuild the old porch. Caleb declined because a golf tournament had come up. The following weekend, Dad invited him again. Caleb said he didn't enjoy manual labor. Dad never asked a third time. Maybe Dad hadn't pushed him away. Maybe Caleb had simply never walked toward him. I don't think we're remembering the same family, I said. You always choose them. They're my family. I was supposed to become your family. You had every opportunity. I loved you. I smiled sadly. I think you loved what life with me represented. You keep saying that. Because every conversation proves it. He grew quiet again. Finally? So, nothing changes your mind? No. What if I sign today? It doesn't change what happened. What if I apologize to everyone? It doesn't erase what you felt. You don't know what I felt. I know what you said. And I know everything you said afterward. Another long silence. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Less pleading. Harder. You'll regret this. I don't think I will. You'll wake up one day and realize you threw away someone who loved you. I hope you're wrong. You'll never find someone who cares the way I did. I hope you're wrong about that too. He laughed bitterly. This is unbelievable. My father dies, and somehow, I become the villain. No. You became the villain when you decided grief should come with a financial calculation. He whispered my name one last time. Natalie. I waited. I really did love you. A tear rolled down my cheek. I know you loved part of me. Then I ended the engagement. The next 48 hours were chaos. Caleb alternated between pleading and blaming. 1 hour, he texted. Please don't do this. We can fix everything. The next, your father destroyed our relationship before he died. Then, you'll never forgive yourself. Then, I forgive you anyway. By the second day, I blocked his number. It felt strangely peaceful, as though someone had finally turned off an alarm that had been ringing for weeks. 3 days later, Aunt Linda came over with groceries. She watched me make coffee before quietly asking, "How are you really doing?" I miss Dad. I know. I also miss the person I thought Caleb was. She nodded. Those are 2 different losses. I keep wondering whether I ignored obvious signs. You did. Her honesty surprised me. You knew. I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Because love has to discover some truths on its own. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. Your father once asked me whether he should say something. What did you tell him? I told him that if Caleb truly loved you, time would prove Kenneth wrong. And if he didn't, she looked toward the living room, where Dad's firefighter helmet sat on the bookshelf. Then time would prove Kenneth right. Rachel walked in carrying another storage box. I should probably admit something. What? I never liked him. Isaiah. I know. I tried. I know. But every time we talked, she hesitated. He always asked about promotions, raises, property values, vacation budgets. He never asked how you were. I thought back. She was right. Whenever Rachel finished describing graduate school, Caleb eventually asked what salary she expected after graduation. When Aunt Linda mentioned volunteering, he asked whether it came with tax benefits. When Dad talked about restoring his old truck, Caleb wanted to know what it would be worth after renovation. Everything eventually became an equation. Rachel sat beside me. I didn't want to ruin your happiness. You wouldn't have. I might have made you defensive. I smiled weakly. Probably. Michael arrived later that afternoon, carrying another stack of boxes from Dad's attic. As we sorted through Christmas decorations, he suddenly looked at me. There's something I never told you. What? Last Thanksgiving. My stomach tightened. I overheard Caleb talking on the phone. What did he say? Michael looked uncomfortable. I didn't think much of it then. What did he say? He laughed and told someone. Michael swallowed. I finally landed a good one. The words echoed inside my head. He was talking about me. I think so. What else? He said you'd never let him struggle again. Silence filled the room. Rachel slowly sat down. I wish I'd told you. Why didn't you? Because it sounded like bragging. He rubbed the back of his neck. I figured guys say stupid things. Maybe they did. But, combined with everything else, the funeral, the trust, the calculations, the arguments, the silence whenever I asked why he loved me, every memory aligned, like puzzle pieces that had always belonged together. I simply hadn't wanted to see the picture. 3 months later, life looked different. Grief still arrived without warning. Sometimes, it was triggered by a firefighter passing with sirens on. Sometimes by seeing Dad's favorite cereal in the grocery store. Sometimes by hearing an old country song he used to sing terribly off-key while fixing things around the house. But now, the memories hurt differently, less like open wounds, more like scars. The trust began paying exactly as Martin promised. I used part of each monthly payment to help Rachel reduce her student loans. Dad would have smiled, knowing his pension was still taking care of us. One afternoon, Martin called to check on the estate paperwork. Before hanging up, he said quietly, "Your father hoped you'd never need the protections he created. I know. He also believed that if you did," Martin paused, "you would eventually understand why. You don't now." A week later, I learned something else. A mutual friend called. "You heard about Caleb?" "No. He's engaged." I blinked. "What?" "To a woman from work. Already. It's been about 2 months." I thanked her and ended the call. Rachel looked at me across the kitchen. "Are you okay?" I considered the question. Then I smiled. Actually, I realized I meant it. I think I finally am. Dad used to tell me that pressure reveals character. When life is easy, he'd say almost anyone can look kind. But when everything falls apart, that's when people stop pretending. I buried my father on a Tuesday. By Friday, I had lost the man I thought I was going to marry. For a while, that felt like losing everything. Now I understand it differently. I didn't lose my future. I escaped the wrong one. Dad's trust protected more than his pension. It protected my life.